I hope that you played around with your screen and with your desktop and you kind of learned where things are. Really, to be honest, I think that the more you use it, like anything else, just like your camera, the more you use it, the easier it is to find things and you'll become used to it. You'll know where things are and you'll learn what they do. And it just takes practice. So, we're going to start and we're going to talk about several things. We're going to talk about layers. We're going to talk about curves and not like hips curves, but curves in Photoshop. And we're going to talk about levels. And what the levels and the curves do is that they help adjust the exposure and on your image. So as you can see, the image that's on my screen right now is pretty dark and it's underexposed. And so I'm going to show you with those two things how you can change that. I'm also going to show you layers, and we are going to work in layers a little bit more as we progress. But I wanted to show you what a layer does and why it's important. So the first thing, we're like I said, there's two different ways that you can always do things in Photoshop. So you can go up to the top of your bar right here, and where there's your menu bar, and you can click layer, and you can create a new layer, and that would give you a new layer. Okay, by doing this, you can see the different things that you can pick. Um, this is a little bit more complicated. Okay, so the way that I do it is I go down to my bottom of my screen. So follow my cursor down here, and you see that little half moon. I'm going to click it, and then I can choose any one of these for a new adjustment layer. All right, so this is the easiest way to do it, is to go to the little half moon, click, and we're going to first do curves. So we're going to click the curves, and you should see a screen like this. I'm going to make this a little bit so that you can see. Okay, there are different ways of working in the curves, but the way that I like to do it is on the linear curve, so you can see where this little dot to dot thing is chosen. And I always go to the very middle of the curve and I bring it up. Okay? Do you see that? Now, if you feel like you need to adjust it in other places, so like this will be adjusting my dark, where my darks are, so I'm going to bring that up a little bit. This would be adjusting where the lights are, and I don't feel like I need to change that. Okay, so you want a nice, if you need to adjust it, you want a nice soft curve. Okay, you would never want it to be like that in your picture. Do you see what I'm saying? So you always want to make sure that your curve is really nice and soft when you adjust it. And this will alleviate. You ever wonder how people get that haze on a picture? Right here. I personally don't like it, so I'm always going to make sure that it's not, that I don't do that. But that's when you see a picture that's kind of hazy and kind of filmy and grainy, this is what they did. They just adjusted the curves. Okay, so we're going to do this again. And you see here, these are my layers. All right, so I'm going to go back up to my original, where on my history. Okay, I'm going to come down to the half moon. I'm going to come to curves, and I'm going to start in the middle, and I'm just going to push it up, and then I think it needs a little bit more, so I'm going to do that right there. Now, that looks pretty good for me, so I'm going to hit the history snapshot. What I want you to see is right here, okay? please pay attention. Where it says opacity, say I didn't like that and it was too much. I could come into the opacity and change it. Opacity is the amount of transparency in your layer. So the way that you need to think of layers is like probably none of you remember this, but when I was growing up, we used to have projectors, and they are not automatic. They had like these screens that we would actually put one on top of the other in order to project something. And that's kind of how you have to think about this, is that it's just like one thin transparent layer over another transparent layer over another transparent layer. And all the layers are adjustable until we do what's called flatten. Okay? So I'm going to take another picture. And so you see I could go from here in my history down to this one, and see what I want you to pay attention to is that my curves are still here down to that one. All right. Now say in this layer, I adjusted the opacity down and I took a snapshot, and then I went back in and I decided, you know what? I need to play with the curves some more. I can come back in. And you see my layers. So on this layer, you see how I adjusted it? I can still adjust it because I haven't flattened it. And then on this layer, I can adjust it. So I'm going to snapshot it. So you can see, there's my original. There's the ones that I've been playing with. And at any time, I can go back in. So I just want you to see that. Like, you can go back into the layer and it is adjustable until, so it's movable. We can still work with it. We haven't done anything to it. Then we want, say we're good. I'm good. Let me go ahead and crop this so that it is where I like it. So I'm going to crop. So we're just going to use kind of, and I usually crop before I do anything. When cropping, I'll just talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But anyway, so say I've done that and I've gotten the adjustments where I want it in the layer. I'm going to come up to layer way up here, and then I'm going to come down and I'm going to hit flatten. So what that does is that means it has merged all the layers together. You can see that on this, there's no more layers. But if I go back up there, my layers are still there. It's just a way, by snapshotting, it's a way, especially in the beginning when you're learning, it's a way of saving your work intermittently so that you don't lose all the work that you've done. So just kind of get used to snapshotting. So I come in, I've played with my curve, I've done my curves. Now I want to do levels, so I'm going to come back down to the half moon, and I'm going to come into levels. Now what levels does is it adds blacks to your blacks and whites to your whites. So I want to, on the very left hand, that little caret, I'm going to move it over because I kind of want to deepen my image. And then right here, this little white, the middle one, I'm going to pull it over just a little bit. And do you remember what I said about micro changes? We don't want to make big changes here. You would never want to come in and do something like that for the most part. So we're just doing little changes. Okay? So we started off with this, and now we are here. And we can move that over if we needed to brighten it, or if we didn't need to brighten it, we wanted to make it a little bit darker, we can move it, slide it to the right. This one slides all your darks. This one will make your brights a little brighter. What you usually want to do is bring this caret over to the beginning of where your curve starts. You see? And then bring your darks in a little bit. And a lot of this is personal preference, okay? I really want you to see, though, we don't want to make huge changes. You want to do it subtly so that your image looks natural. So we started off with this image, and then after we adjusted the curves and the levels, we ended up with this. So much better already, right? Okay, let's do another one. Oh, this is his little brother. His little brother's, that's a pretty good picture. Let's work on this one. So I'm going to show you a trick. Okay. I like my sky in this picture. I like them, but I want to brighten them up just a teeny bit. So this is what we're going to do. Okay, guys. You are going to hit Command J or Control J on your computer, on your keyboard. Command J. Whoop, it gave me two. Actually, I'm just going to, because I didn't want to have two. Let me just we're going to do that again. Command J. Okay, so you see I have a new layer, right? Everybody with me? All right, the next thing we're going to do is come up to our lasso tool. Okay? Now, this is what's really important. I want you to go up over here and make sure, follow my cursor, up here. I want you to make sure that it is at 250 pixels, okay? Everybody with me? So, you're going to create a layer. Make sure we're not working on the original. We need to be working on the layer. We're going to go up to lasso, and then you're going to come up and make sure that's 250 pixels, okay? This is really super important. Then what we're going to do is we're going to loosely lasso around them. Okay? And then you should get the little ant. Whenever that's a little blinking, that's called the ants. So you should get those. Okay, now watch. We're going to come down to the half moon. We're going to come up to curves. And I'm going to just bump that up ever so slightly. Remember, micro changes. Okay? You saw me do that. Then I'm going to come up to select, and I'm going to reselect what I did, and I'm going to inverse it, which means that now my whole picture, except for this part, is now selected. I'm going to come back over to layers. I'm going to hit curves, and I'm going to take it down just a tad, guys, not a lot. We don't want to do this because we don't want a halo. We're just trying to create a little bit of difference between them and the picture. I mean, them and the background, excuse me. Do you see how I did that? Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and go up, and I'm going to hit reselect. I'm going to come down to my levels, and I'm going to just slide over because I just want their darks to become a little bit darker. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you from where we were. We were at this, which actually in this picture, I really like the fact that I have that, so I probably would never crop that out. But anyway, so we're at this, and then to this. I'm going to go do it again in this so that maybe you can see it a little better. So I don't have a layer. I'm going to hit Command or Control J. All right, I'm going to hit my lasso, make sure I'm at 250 over here, and I'm going to select them. right? I'm going to come down to my layers. I'm going to hit curves. I'm going to bump them up just a little bit because I want her whites a little bit whiter. Maybe pull this in just a little bit because I want, oh, that's good. I like that. All right. Then I'm going to come back up and to select, to my select, I'm going to reselect. Then I'm going to hit inverse. And now I'm going to come back over to my layers. And I'm going to do curves. And I'm going to pull it down a little bit. Okay. And I'm going to snapshot that. I'm going to go ahead and hit select again, reselect. I'm going to come over to my layers. I'm going to come over to my brightness and contrast. And I'm going to be able to brighten that up. Or I could darken it. And you see how if I darken it, you see how they are staying, there's kind of a halo around them. I really don't like that. So I'm just going to kind of keep it. And I'm going to show you other ways later at another time of how to bring in that sky a little bit more. So this is where we started. Little changes, not big changes, little changes. If I wanted to go in and make his darks a little bit darker and the sides a little bit darker, you can see how it's all darkening a little bit. This is how I would do that. I just went into the levels. Okay, so we started here, I can do here, I can still adjust, like over here I could come down to the curves that we first did and I can adjust it. You see how that would, by moving the opacity, you see, so you can still adjust it as long as we haven't flattened. Yay! All right, we're going to do one more. Okay. It's cropped. It's pretty well exposed. The only thing I might do is brighten up his face a little tiny bit. So I'm going to hit Control J. I'm going to lasso around his face just a little bit. We're going to make sure that 250 is checked up there. I'm going to come down to my curves. And I'm just going to bump up his face exposure just a smidge. You see, we're not doing like big things like that. That looks horrible. I can always tell when people are brand new to Photoshop because they make their changes too great. You know, the changes are too big. So there we go. And say now I wanted to, I'm going to do another, I'm going to darken the background around him. Command J. Whoop. And I didn't mean to do that, sorry. I'm going to select, reselect, inverse, come up to my curves or down to my curves, I guess it is, whatever it is. And I'm going to pull that down just a little bit, just so the background, I don't want his skin to become too orange, so I'm going to show you how to fix that later. So it's just a little bit, but that's how you would do that. So now what I would like for you guys to do is I really want you to play with curves and levels and to show me your pictures that you've played on. Upload them, really play with the lassoing tool. Make sure that your lasso is the lasso that's with a loop rather than one of these. You'll get frustrated, and always make sure that you're at 250 and that you're in a new layer. Okay, a copied layer, which is the Command J. We make a copy of the layer. All right, those are my tips. And then nice slow movements. All right, guys, see you next time.